Many of you will already be familiar with this absolutely horrific case by now, as well as the name of the victim. If, by some miracle, you haven't heard about the disgusting crimes that involve this victim, I'll do my best to spare you the horrible details while still explaining how utterly disgusting this case is. If, for whatever reason, you do want to know in more detail what happened to Junko Furuta, I would advise you to look that up on your own. I cannot put it into words how heartbreaking the story of Junko Furuta, at least to me it is. Out of all the things I've had to research for this iceberg, this one was among the most difficult for me. Junko Furuta was a resident of Saitama Prefecture in a town called Misato. She was the middle child, having an older and younger brother, and 2 loving parents. She was a high school student, being only 17 years of age. She had been working part-time to save up money for a graduation trip she had planned on attending. Junko, in one of her final correspondences with her friends, told them how she was excited to watch the final episode of a show called Tonbo, or in English, Firefly. On November 25th of 1988, 4 boys began committing what has been called the worst case of minors engaging in crime in Japan since the end of World War II. The names of these 4 boys were omitted because of their age. They were under 18 and therefore minors. And frankly, these 4 boys do not deserve human names. Let's take a look at one of them. Boy A had been a delinquent since elementary school, beginning with small acts of crime like shoplifting and vandalism, largely victimless crimes. As time went on, they began to increase in severity, with no action being taken on his parents' side other than enrolling him in a private school, which he dropped out of. He was also living with the older sister of Boy D, who he was dating at the time. She broke up with him after he began to get more and more involved with the Yakuza. Boy A was the leader of this crime. This will become more important as we look at any case proceedings, and that is why most of the information regarding the assailants is about Boy A. Boy A and Boy C, on the night of the crime, were wandering around the town of Misato. Their goal was to rob and have their way with any local woman they came across. In a tragic case of wrong place at the wrong time, Junko Furuta happened to be riding her bike home from work. Though it also has been stated that Boy A had his sights on Junko for quite some time, and she had rejected him on multiple occasions at school. They orchestrated a plan. Boy C ran up and kicked Furuta off her bike and immediately ran away. Boy A, pretending to just be a witness of the scene, approached Junko and offered to walk her home, to keep her safe. After gaining her trust, he did horrible things to her. Twice, at least. By the end of that, he had stashed her in a hotel where he called boys B, C, and D, bragging about what he put her through. The 4 of them, suggested by Boy B, decided to keep her in captivity so that they could all take part. This was not the first time they had done this either. Another woman had been a victim of the same group, who had been released prior to the capturing of Junko. They stashed Junko in Boy C's house on the 2nd floor, and they repeatedly told Junko that due to the pocketbook in her backpack with her address, they had figured out where she lived and would hurt her family if she tried to escape or resist. On the 2nd day after her disappearance, her family contacted the police, but the boys, catching wind, forced Furuta to call her mother on 3 separate occasions. Each time, she was forced to claim that she had run away and was safe with her friends. Whenever Boy C's parents came home to visit, Furuta was forced to act as his girlfriend. Everything by them was meticulously planned to keep up the appearance that Junko was there of her own volition. The parents didn't believe this for long, however, would later inform law enforcement that they didn't report their own son because they were too afraid of him. Over the next 40 days, the boys would make Furuta's life a living hell. They would invite strange men over and disfigure her for hours. By the end of the 40 days, Junko was completely malnourished and immobile, so much so that she couldn't physically leave the second floor to go to the bathroom anymore. By the way, Boise's parents lived within this home as well, and they said nothing, claiming to fear boys A through D. These boys, slowly losing interest in her, eventually decided to abduct a new woman in her place. Boy A is the one who largely put an end to Junko's captivity and decided to do it in the absolute worst way possible. Reportedly over something as fickle as losing a game of mahjong, he decided to take all his anger out on Junko. It was Boise's brother who cared to discover that Junko's body hadn't moved since the attack, and that she appeared to be deceased. When he alerted the boys, they were frightened of being charged with her death, and so they put her body in a duffel bag. From there, they carried her to a 210-liter drum, filling the surrounded area with wet concrete. In January of 1989, only a few weeks later, boys A and B were caught and arrested for the second girl they had abducted. The police, in an investigation, came to Boise's house, where Junko was previously held. Boy A, thinking one of the others had confessed to what they had done to Junko, tried to get ahead of the curve and told them where Junko's body could be found. The police were confused. After all, Junko's disappearance was not even being investigated at this time. During her captivity, Junko was forced to call her family and say she had run away. Her family had no idea what had actually happened and never reported anything. Nobody did. As law enforcement was in the process of discovering the body, Boy B was arrested for different illegal acts against another separate woman. Once law enforcement identified Junko, all 4 boys were arrested, and some of the strange men who had partook in Junko's suffering were also arrested. Since all of the boys were juveniles at the time of the crime, Japanese law was obligated to conceal their identities. However, a newspaper had done independent investigations and published the names of the boys to the public. Since the publication and many others felt that what they did was so abhorrent, it did not warrant any sort of protection. And since they worked so hard, we'll go ahead and uncensor the names as well. All 4 boys pled guilty to, quote, committing bodily injury that resulted in death, which is not at all as severe as what they actually did, obviously. Boy A is Hiroshi Miyano, who was 18 at the time of the crime. He was initially sentenced to 17 years, appealed it, lost the appeal, and was instead given 20 years, which is still nowhere near enough time in my opinion. Miyano had been released after serving his time in jail and moved back in with his mother. However, in 2018, Miyano was arrested once again for the attempted murder of a 32-year-old man. Boy B is Joe Ogura, who was 17 at the time of the crime. Ogura served only 8 years in a juvenile prison. He allegedly changed his last name to Kamisaku, likely not wanting to be noticed by people who follow the case, although has also allegedly boasted about what he's done to Junko Furuta years after the incident. Boy C is Nobuhara Minato, who has since changed his name to Shinji Minato and was 16 at the time of the crime. He was given a 4 to 6 year sentence, but it was appealed. He, like Boy A, lost the appeal to the same judge as Boy A, who instead gave him 5 to 9 years. He is the one whose house Junko was trapped in. His brother and parents, who lived in the same house the entire time, were not charged with absolutely anything. Boy D is Yasushi Watanabe, who was 17 at the time of the crime. The least amount of information was given about him, and all that was originally reported was that he was originally only sentenced to 3 to 4 years, but it was upgraded to 5 to 7. Junko's parents were horrified at the low sentences. Looking to do anything they could to honor the name of their daughter, they sued Boy A's parents, and they did win about $370,000 in compensation. Here is a quote said at a memorial service by one of Junko's friends. "Jun-chan, welcome back. I have never imagined that we would see you again in this way. You must have been in so much pain, so much suffering. The coat we all made for the school festival together really looked beautiful on you. We will never forget you. I have heard that our principal has presented you with a graduation certificate, so we all graduated together, all of us. Jun-chan, there is no more pain, no more suffering. Please, rest in peace." At the funeral, Furuta's intended future employer, who had promised her a job after high school, allowed a work uniform to be buried within her casket. Her graduation certificate was awarded to her parents. In the social aftermath of the incident, many issues were brought up to the public. Firstly, Japanese media largely blamed the West, specifically America, due to its rise in violent crime at the time, for the poor influence on Japanese citizens. There was also the issue and outrage of charging somebody as a minor when they commit crimes this heinous and horrible. We're going to be talking about another case later on in the video that discusses this in more detail. Unfortunately, not much was done until this case had occurred years later. This is a video that kind of gained traction on Nico Nico Douga at one point. It's simple but quite impactful, showing a young boy with an abundance of maggots crawling all over a spot on his head. The spot appears to be an infestation of them, which is absolutely terrifying in itself. There have been a lot of bug-related topics on this iceberg so far, but nothing really compares to this. You can feel this video. You can literally feel them as you watch it. And there's also a variant that's just a still image from the video, and it's just as disturbing. And while it seems as though the boy is being mistreated and not receiving care for what is going on, the truth behind this photo is that the maggots are the treatment. Much like how leeches have been used to remove toxins and even heal skin grafts, maggots are also used in modern medicine today. I mean, according to medical sources, maggots, when properly disinfected, of course, can liquefy dead tissue, kill bacteria on the wound, and even encourage and stimulate healing. Yes, it sounds gross as hell, but this video is actually footage of a medical treatment taking place. So at least there's that. The name of this one likely says it all, but for those who need further background and explanation, it's a shock video that made its way onto various shock video sites in 2016. It all starts with an unclothed man who remains faceless and anonymous. You can't see his face. And he's approaching a mousetrap. And there's this really bizarre Kickstarter royalty-free flute music playing in the background. Here's a little taste of that. Anyways, it ends with the guy being freed and the same royalty-free music playing in the outro. You can also hear a woman shouting and questioning what is wrong with the man and saying that he's sick. This part sounds like it's just a voiceover. That's really it though. So, this man is named Kazuyoshi Miura, and the crime he committed is nothing short of appalling. This is why he is often referred to as Japan's O.J. Simpson. Born in Yamanashi Prefecture in 1947, Miura dropped out of high school while living in Yokohama and became involved in various crimes fairly early in his life. Among these early crimes included arson. He had spent a significant amount of time in juvenile detention centers for this reason. It was in 1979 when he began committing crimes that were far more severe, however, as this was when Miura's lover, a woman named Shizuko Shiraishi, had been found deceased. Cause of death was never determined, though foul play was absolutely involved. Miura was suspected, but nothing came of it and the case was never officially resolved. Fast forward to 1981, Miura is now a clothing importer who often traveled to the United States, specifically to Los Angeles. By this point in time, he had married. His wife was a woman named Kazumi Miura. It was during one of their routine trips to Los Angeles on November 18th of 1981 that Kazumi Miura was murdered. It was on that day when Miura and his wife were walking in a parking lot and were suddenly jumped by an unknown assailant. Miura was shot in a non-critical area of his right leg. His wife Kazumi, however, faced injuries directly to her head. She remained in a coma for almost a year to the day of the incident, paralyzed and on life support, before ultimately passing away in 1982. Kazumi was flown back to Japan to spend the final months of her life there. The couple reportedly had a 13-month-old child Kazumi had given birth shortly before the incident. During and within the aftermath of Kazumi's passing, Miura had put a great deal of effort in protesting the violence of Los Angeles, even writing a letter to Ronald Reagan asking for more effort in keeping the streets of LA safe. And over in Japan, the stereotypes of violence in America were further heightened due to this incident. This would continue to be a topic throughout the 1980s in Japan, especially with the rising crime within the country itself. The entire ordeal died down following this, assuming this was some case of being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and that the couple were victims of a random armed man who was simply never found and tried for his crimes. Though, 3 years later, in 1984, these assumptions were investigated further. This was when the cracks in the story began to show, and when the truth, the real story of what happened, finally broke through. Shukan Bunshun is a weekly Japanese magazine. It's been in publication since 1959 and is well known for their exposure of political and entertainment scandals. They are often known for using more direct and often unsavory methods in receiving exclusive information. However, their methods and information is sometimes favored by the public. They are the very same publication that revealed the names of those responsible for the death of Junko Furuta. Honestly, an entire video could be made on the famous exposés of this infamous publication. In the 3 years following the incident, they researched Miura extensively, discovering many concerning details leading up to that night in 1981. First, Miura had taken out a hefty life insurance policy on Kazumi. This policy was worth the equivalent of $1.4 million US. Beyond this, a woman was found who agreed to be interviewed by Shukan Bunshun. This woman, an unnamed actress, was Miura's mistress during the time he was married. According to this interview with her, Miura was openly talking about wanting to have the life of his wife ended. It went even beyond this. Miura had even requested that she attack his wife for him. And this attack did happen. It occurred in August of 1981. While they were all in Los Angeles. The magazine also discovered the passing of Chizuko Shiraishi in 1979. With some digging, they found out that Miura was a suspect. They even found that the Los Angeles Police Department suspected him for the murder of his wife as well. They simply didn't have conclusive evidence. These key details were also spotlighted in the article. Beyond this, they discovered even more concerning details. Miura had withdrawn a large sum of money from Shiraishi's bank account in 1979 at the same time as her passing. It was also found that he took her to Los Angeles, and that was also where Shiraishi had passed away. He also had blamed the high crime rates of Los Angeles for her passing and was quite vocal about this incident as well. Because of the correlation to LA, the whole incident was referred to the public as simply the LA scandal. Miura was previously heavily sympathized with, especially with the concerns of violent Western culture back then. He was truly seen as a victim and a man who had his family torn apart by a horrible, mindless crime. Following this exposure, though, the public finally saw this man's true colors, and Miura received what he truly deserved. Every single news outlet, TV, radio, print, literally everyone reported on this story at the time. It was a true and genuine media frenzy in Japan. Every day for weeks, this was the biggest story throughout the country. This was also when his history of crime and delinquency came to light to the public as well. News outlets obsessed over every last detail of Miura's life. News outlets camped outside his home en masse. Miura had attempted to flee to London. Some press even followed him there, not wanting to take their eyes off this man and his disgusting actions. Miura could not flee forever, and following an official investigation was arrested in 1985. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment, or at least he was supposed to be. In 2003, after an extremely lengthy trial, Kazuyoshi Miura was acquitted and deemed innocent. The reason given was insufficient evidence. Oh, but the part where he had the mistress attack his wife? He was charged with that. Miura also fled lawsuits against 400 different publications, claiming they were defamatory. According to Miura himself, he won 80% of them. This is not fact, though, just his own word, so take that as you see it. Miura then fled to Saipan. Because Saipan is a US territory, he ended up being arrested on the spot. This was because his crime remained under investigation in the United States. He was sent back to Los Angeles, where all of this began in the first place. He hired a lawyer and continued to fight his charges, but did not receive the same response as he did in Japan, not nearly the amount of leniency. It was also in 2008, still held in prison in Los Angeles, that Miura ultimately passed away. Tsutomu Miyazaki was also referred to in life as the Rat Man. If this name does not sound familiar, perhaps the title The Otaku Murders will. An absolutely disgusting series of child abductions and murders during the late 1980s. This specific case incorrectly created an extremely negative stigma towards otaku and otaku culture, based on misinformation presented by the media, and it took many years in Japan to not see otaku in any heinous or devious way. The crimes that took place within Saitama Prefecture for almost a full year remain among Japan's most horrific true crime incidents. Miyazaki was known to be problematic by both his family and those who knew him. Born in 1962 to a wealthy family as their eldest son. Born prematurely, Miyazaki was diagnosed with a rare birth defect that fused various joints in his body together. In addition to this, he was diagnosed with multiple personality disorders later on in life. The combination of mental and physical handicaps left Miyazaki as shunned by his peers. Despite attending prestigious private schools throughout his life, particularly Meidai High School. His parents, known for running a renowned newspaper in Japan's Kanto region, were described as being too busy to meet Miyazaki's needs as a handicapped child. For this reason, he was often cared for by his grandfather as well as a man hired as a nanny of sorts. This nanny was described as having an intellectual disability. Miyazaki had two younger sisters, both of whom kept a distance from him growing up. Despite how distant Miyazaki's parents remain, they urged their only son to study to take over the family business. Miyazaki expressed no desire in doing so, not passing exams required to attend the prestigious Meiji University, and instead studying to become a photography technician. This detail will be unfortunately important later. It was in the spring of 1988 when Miyazaki's grandfather had passed away, when his mental state began to further deteriorate. A series of incidents occurred during this time, one involving Miyazaki consuming his grandfather's cremated remains. Another involved Miyazaki sneaking into his sister's bathroom and watching her shower. When the sister confronted him directly, Miyazaki physically attacked the sister, and later his mother when the issue was brought up to her directly. This brings us to August of 1988. A 4-year-old girl, Mari Kono, was playing outside at a friend's house. Miyazaki coaxed this girl to approach his car. At some point, she entered the vehicle itself. This was when Miyazaki drove Kono to a secluded area beneath a bridge. For approximately 30 minutes, he sat with the girl, though ultimately decided to murder her at this very spot. It was some time later that Kono's family, still hoping for their missing daughter's safe return, received a package at their doorstep. This package contained Mari's ashes, clothes, and a disturbing letter that read, "Mari-san, bones, cremated. Investigate, prove." Because Miyazaki not only knew Kono's first name as well as her home address, the premeditated nature of this murder was clear. It was also clear that whoever did this was a danger to every child in this area. They would unfortunately remain a danger to this neighborhood for 11 more months, and Mari Kono would not be the only victim. In October of 1988, Miyazaki would claim another innocent life, this time 7-year-old Masami Yoshizawa. Yoshizawa was walking down a rural road when Miyazaki spotted her and offered her a ride. Yoshizawa said yes. Instead of driving the girl to where she had requested, Miyazaki took her to the same exact location under that bridge where he brought Kono. He then murdered Yoshizawa. Another 2 months pass, and Miyazaki once again targets a new victim, this time 4-year-old Erika Namba, another young girl walking outside alone. Miyazaki once again attempted persuading the child into his car, but this time was met with refusal. Miyazaki then abducted Namba by force. Instead of returning to the same location under the bridge, Miyazaki instead drove her to a parking lot in Naguri, part of Saitama Prefecture, where he would murder Namba. Namba's body would be discovered 3 days later in a different parking lot. Following this, Namba's family received a postcard from Miyazaki. It read, "Erika, cold, cough, throat, rest, death." Spelled out from magazine clippings. The final murder would take place 6 months later, in June of 1989, the final victim being 5-year-old Ayako Nomoto. Miyamoto approached Nomoto and convinced her to allow him to take photos of her. He then led her to his car to engage in the same acts as the previous 3 victims, though this time he transported her body to his apartment. Nomoto's body was later discarded in a cemetery, though after that was retrieved for Miyazaki to later hide in his closet. 1 month later, in July of 1989, Miyazaki would attempt to make another innocent life his victim, though luckily this attempt would result in failure. This was when Miyazaki targeted 2 sisters playing outside. He persuaded the younger sister to stray from the older and began taking photographs of her out in the open. This was when the elder sister ran to get help from the father, who located Miyazaki and attacked him. Miyazaki was unable to be restrained and fled to his car, located at a nearby park. In the meantime, the father was able to contact police, who arrested Miyazaki at this park. Following his arrest, Miyazaki's apartment was searched. Over 5,000 videotapes were discovered, the majority of which being slasher films and pornography. Though the inclusion of some anime led to the media dubbing Miyazaki the otaku killer. This led to widespread panic, bad enough to be considered mass hysteria, ultimately leading the public to fear and ostracize otaku culture. The official trial began in 1990, with Miyazaki himself described as being eerily calm throughout the proceedings. He was frequently observed drawing what he dubbed the Rat Man, claiming he became this Rat Man against his will, and that the Rat Man was the one who possessed him to commit these crimes. Despite this, the court deemed Miyazaki sane and aware of the horrific crimes he had committed. He was charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder, sentenced to death, and finally executed in 2008 at the age of 45. What we have here is yet another Japanese blog. There are a lot of blogs in Japan, though nothing about this specific blog is pleasant, especially from my own perspective as somebody with a uterus. This blog is what's commonly known as an SM blog. While this is a type of adult interest that is anything but uncommon, believe me when I say that this is a blog that is highly disturbing and should never, absolutely ever, under any circumstance, be replicated by anyone, ever. So what does this blog entail? Being as short and vague as possible, it features a woman using highly hazardous and flammable and life-threatening items for pleasure, most notably fireworks and airsoft guns. And my only personal comment to that, personally, is that I genuinely, wholeheartedly hope that this woman is still alive and in good health today. This is a case that once again brought forward the issues regarding minors and crimes committed, particularly the issue of making their wrongdoings their full responsibility, especially in situations like the following. Shinichiro Azuma was a resident of the Suma ward of Kobe Prefecture, someone who both mirrored Tsutomu Miyazaki as well as idolized him, claiming he aspired to be the next Tsutomu Miyazaki and Zodiac killer. This proclamation was made by Azuma when only 14 years old. Azuma was problematic growing up, having carried weapons like knives with him to school and claiming they calmed him. Azuma had also assaulted 3 schoolgirls over a span of 10 months in 1996. Little to nothing was done to punish him. It was following these incidents when Azuma took on the name Seito Sakakibara and escalated his crimes. In May of 1997, Azuma kidnapped and murdered an 11-year-old boy named Jun Hase. Hase was a special needs student who attended Tainohata Elementary. Hase's head was discovered at the elementary school gate hours before the school had physically opened that morning. The letter discovered within his remains, written in red ink, read as follows: "This is the beginning of the game. Try to stop me if you can, stupid police. I desperately want to see people die. It is a thrill for me to commit murder. A bloody judgment is needed for my years of great bitterness." Later on, a 1,400-word letter, also written in red ink, was received by the Kobe Shinbun. This letter began with the phrase, "Now it's the beginning of a game." The letter had Azuma referring to the people around him as vegetables, and was noted to be similar in style to the Zodiac Killer's letters. Both letters were signed as Seito Sakakibara, though the media had misspelled his name upon the initial report as Onibara or Demon Rose. The name chosen by Azuma intentionally used characters meaning alcohol, devil, rose, saint, and fight. The misinterpretation of the name would result in Azuma writing yet another letter to the press, claiming to end the lives of 3 vegetables for every time his pen name was not cited correctly. It was the ongoing investigation of Hase's murder that eventually landed Azuma as a suspect on June 28th. Following apprehension, Azuma not only confessed to the murder of Jun Hase, but also for the murder of 10-year-old Ayaka Yamashita in March of 1997. This timeline coincided with the 10-month string of assaults on schoolgirls that Azuma engaged in prior to Hase's death. And because Azuma was only 14 years old, he was only sentenced to 6.5 years at a juvenile correctional facility. He was released in 2004 at 21 years old. This case is influential in that it finally set forward actions in making minors responsible for their crimes at a younger age. The age of criminal responsibility, being 16 years old in 1997, was lowered to 14 in 2001. This absolutely does not reverse the appalling levels of leniency granted to murderers like Azuma or those who committed similar acts in the years prior. We are now brought to a horrific case known as the Sasebo slashing, or the murder of Satomi Mitarai, a case that continues to be sensationalized by the masses, who dubbed the 11-year-old perpetrator Nevada-tan. The incident took place on June 1st of 2004, within the school walls of Okubo Elementary within Sasebo City of Nagasaki Prefecture. This murder took place during school hours, specifically during lunch period. The assailant was an 11-year-old student named Tsuji Natsumi, who lured 12-year-old Mitarai Satomi into an empty classroom before murdering her with a box cutter. A teacher who had noticed both Natsumi and Mitarai were missing among their classmates went looking for the two and discovered Mitarai deceased. Following this discovery, the teacher rushed to call the police. Natsumi, in the meantime, had calmly returned to her classroom, not reacting any differently to how she did on any average day. She just calmly sat back down at her desk and did not hide the evidence of her actions from her peers in the slightest. Natsumi was taken into police custody and referred to as Shoujoe publicly to avoid her identity from being revealed. Despite the 2001 change in criminal responsibility to 14, Natsumi remained protected as a minor since she was only 11 years old. Upon her arrest, Natsumi confessed to her crime quickly, reportedly apologizing profusely throughout the interrogation. It was the aftermath of this incident that sparked a variety of responses. Some were expected, such as the natural shock and disgust, and the urge to lower the age of criminal responsibility yet again, though others were outright disturbing, as anonymous forum site 2chan was filled with users actively discussing the case, with many of them idolizing Natsumi. From here, efforts to reveal her real name to the public had begun. Some 2chan users found an image of Natsumi in a school yearbook. She was wearing a sweatshirt from UNR, or the University of Nevada, Reno. This led to her online fans, disgusting as that sounds, dubbing her Nevada-tan. Tan being a more cutesy version of Chan. As a side note, that specific UNR sweatshirt was a bestseller at the on-campus store for years, according to what I've personally heard. I know this because I had attended UNR myself. Also, with that considered, I should also mention that this horrible crime has had its share of overseas fans as well. This is equally disgusting. This girl literally murdered her classmate. This is not fiction. Disgusting remarks were not limited to anonymous people online, however. One politician referred to Natsumi as Genki, which is typically a positive way of calling someone lively or energetic or well. For example, when you ask someone if they're well in Japanese, you often say genki or o genki desu ka if you're being a little more formal. In short, to be genki is to be seen as well or lively or energetic in a good way. Another politician was observed as almost commending the choice of using a box cutter, noting that it was a manly action. Whatever the hell that's supposed to allude to, I don't know. In short, this horrific crime was not taken seriously by many people. While Natsumi's name remained concealed, it was eventually unearthed and revealed. This was when Fuji TV accidentally leaked the full name of Natsumi during a broadcast covering the story. The response to this information was both typical, many happy that this girl was held accountable in some regard, and disgusting, as the online fanatics used this information to research the girl further. Natsumi was discovered to be an individual who was unnaturally obsessed with violence and death. She was found to be a big fan of the internet horror game Red Room, something we've discussed in a previous level of this Iceberg. Natsumi had also read the novel Battle Royale numerous times and was also a fan of the film adaptation. For those unfamiliar, Battle Royale is similar in plot to the Hunger Games, though more gory and horror-oriented. While Natsumi claimed to have no motive, she later confessed that she targeted Mitarai due to the victim calling Natsumi a goody-goody and making negative statements regarding Natsumi's weight. In the Okubo Elementary yearbook for that school year, a blank page was included. This was intended to leave it up to the student how to honor the victim and how they wanted to remember or memorialize the two girls. The school let each student decide if they wanted to put photos of Mitarai, Natsumi, both, or neither. Natsumi's crime, despite her being age 11, was treated with a higher level of severity than expected. Tsuji Natsumi was institutionalized, transported to Tochigi Prefecture, where she would remain at a reformatory for 4 years. The original sentence was 2 years, but later extended to 4 due to a mental evaluation. During one of these mental evaluations during her prison sentence, Natsumi was diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. Some even claim this as an excuse for her actions, which shows a severe level of disregard in Japan when it comes to understanding and addressing mental health. Natsumi was eventually released on May 29th of 2008 at around 15 years of age. She remains free, though her current whereabouts are unknown. Natsumi would be in her early 30s today, and what's disturbing is how fans of her still remain. There are even TikToks made by said fans that are attempting to track her down, some with photos claiming to be of her today. Others with images edited with apps like FaceApp in an attempt to create images of how she would look as an adult. I'm not going to show these since I don't want to showcase or highlight this kind of behavior in any way. The internet continues to behave this way in response to other Japanese cases. Notably a case from 2019 where a woman named Yuka Takaoka attempted to murder her lover. The spread of this story online resulted in her being dubbed a real-life yandere, and fans of Takaoka began to emerge. Also around this time, various creators who create anime-related content proclaimed their own disgust at this phenomenon. Positive responses to these horrible crimes and incidents are disgusting and should never be encouraged. You are probably already familiar with this one, it's pretty well known. But because the Japanese internet appears to be just as horrified by it, well, we gotta talk about it. Goatse is well known for being the end result of bait-and-switch pranks and even webpage hacking incidents. It's like Rickroll before Rickroll was a thing, and also a lot more disturbing than Rickroll. And unlike Rickrolling, where the reaction is often annoyance and even amusement, the response to Goatse is usually shock and disgust. Or just, how and why. So, what is a Goatse, or rather, who is Goatse? Well, the name is an abbreviation for the full webpage, that webpage being goatse.cx. It's a little play on words, get it? The webpage features a rather impactful image, this image technically being referred to as hello.jpg. And what is hello.jpg? A photo of a naked man bent over exposing his back end and spreading the cheeks wide open. Like cartoon physics levels of open, and it genuinely looks altered and not humanly possible. But from what I've heard, the image is not altered. While the hello.jpg image is the best known, the site featured multiple pages, well, only 3. The home page with the hello image known as the receiver, and another page with an image of a man on a boat with a cartoonishly large extremity. This image is referred to as the giver. Oh, there's also a feedback page? I bet that got some wacky and zany reviews back in the day. So, the Goatse webpage was officially erected in 1999. Mark 1 lasted for a total of 5 years and was officially closed back in 2004. And that was more than enough time for it to make its mark on internet culture and history as a whole. Plenty of Miura sites still exist. And if all that did not satisfy your curiosity, you may be wondering about the guy himself. Who actually is Goatse? Well, it's not entirely confirmed, but many believe it to be an adult actor named Kirk Johnson. Wang has a full video on this. It's much better than my half-assed explanation if you want to check that out. This is very, very likely the most disgusting Guro AV I have ever seen. This is including film core from one of the last levels, which in itself is awful considering it was mainly discovered during the search for Saki Sanobashi. So, what is Naked Lunch or Zenda no Ranchi? It's basically a surgery-themed adult Japanese film from 2008. The themes featured within it include amputation and removal of bodily substances like fat through liposuction. There are also bodily fluids like puke. It's following the surgeries where the lunch part comes in, as the actresses consume their own body parts, and parts removed from men as well. One of the scenes involves sauteing and putting something in ramen. That's all I'm gonna say. As you can likely imagine, the ethics and legality of making such a film are questionable. While many scenes are staged and clearly not real, the ramen sauteing scene in particular got the filmmakers in some hot water. And by that being more specific, I mean Japan's Video Ethics Association investigated one of the scenes involving the man and an area of his groin that was removed on camera. Since that one definitely had to be real, or at least very, very convincing. Because of this controversy, the specific scene had to be silenced, with the full scene removed by inserting a black screen through the entire scene, and it's just a black bar in silence for a duration of time, and then the film kind of resumes. I mean, they could have just, I don't know, cut it out, as in cut out the scene. As far as I can tell, this is a very dangerous illegal substance that originated in Russia. So dangerous that the search term brings up videos of those who consume this dangerous substance entering severe bouts of mania that leave them as real-life zombies after the effects wear off. Some images of those who used crocodile show them with green skin and scaly blackened sores, very much appearing like a zombie. This disfigurement of the skin can be due to gangrene or full-on necrosis, which is when your skin literally dies. Many of those dependent on crocodile have had their limbs literally die off from the effects of it. This results in hands and feet literally falling off. Because this dangerous substance is reportedly cheap to make, it spread rapidly throughout Europe in 2003 and has been referred to as the world's deadliest drug because so many have obtained it and become victim to addiction and the horrific and rapid deterioration from ingesting it. It's been reported that epidemics remain throughout the world and that this is still a very real issue in those parts of the world today. While there isn't much documentation regarding this substance and its history in Japan specifically, it likely has had its influence in the country due to the close proximity of Japan and Russia. At the very least, the images of those who fell victim to dependence on this drug is enough to make the term unsearchable. While this incident is often claimed to be an outlandish rumor for how astonishing the event itself is, what's referred to as the Ramree Crocodile Massacre is very much a real event that occurred. Officially referred to as the Ramree Island Massacre, this event of mass fatality occurred in 1945, during World War II. In early 1945, approximately 1,000 Japanese troops were traversing Ramree Island of Bengal Bay, located in Burma or modern-day Myanmar. The troops faced a disturbing ultimatum, as they were a bit trapped. Either stay put and meet their demise to opposing soldiers, or cross a thick swamp filled with crocodiles in order to meet the rest of the troops on the other side of the island. They chose the swamp, which resulted in the infamous massacre itself. The swamp was deep and, as you could likely imagine, very thick and almost impossible to swim or walk through. It was also home to many saltwater crocodiles, which so happens to be the largest species of crocodile in the world. British soldiers had noticed the Japanese troops moving across the swamp, but made no attempt to approach them, knowing what awaited within the swamp itself. While humans face difficulty crossing a swamp by foot, crocodiles thrive within it. And for that reason, were able to get to the Japanese soldiers quickly and surround them. Once again, the story of what happened sounds fake to many. Many historians and online users have fact-checked it over the years, and it has been validated as real. Which brings us to the grotesque detail of at least 500 of the 1,000 troops being attacked and eaten alive by the crocodiles within the swamp. First-hand accounts of the event are pretty horrific. Some of the British troops wrote diary entries following the massacre, many not believing their own eyes with what they had witnessed. The Ramree Island Crocodile Massacre is listed as the world's largest and most fatal crocodile attack. It is reported that only 480 of the 1,000 troops had survived. These numbers have never been confirmed, however. This is yet another niche AV title. The only way I can describe it is a Japanese variant of 2 Girls, 1 Cup. Though the OG 2 Girls, 1 Cup is actually a level 6 on the Do Not Search wiki, so... Well, okay, I can go a little further. It looks like curry. There's a common joke involving curry that people comment regarding this adult video. Stuff like, don't eat curry while watching, or I swear if I get curry in my school lunch tomorrow. It's notorious for its disgusting nature and popular as a shock video in Japan, though you may be relieved to know that the props used in this production are not real. By that, I mean that curry substance is closer to actual curry than what they want you to think it is. It was made by concocting a very thick gravy with a lot of flour, which in itself is very similar to curry and why curry itself is actually called curry in the first place. Because curry is a dish that actually came about due to the influence of gravy. Gravy came first, in case anyone was wondering that. Anyways, yeah, this video is gross. This is a book that's American in origin. It features a collection of crime scene photos, described as a homicide detective's scrapbook. While the book was published in 1996, the photos were taken between 1921 and 1950 in Los Angeles by LAPD detective Jack Huddleston. Huddleston requests that the contents of this book be handled with respect, and sought out to share its gruesome contents as a glimpse at the real horrors that film noir often romanticized in Hollywood during the same era. Even so much as looking up listings of this book will bring up horrific images. And the photos on the cover of the book itself show gruesome crime scene photos. Even the Amazon and Goodreads listings aren't safe, so please heed this warning before seeking out this book on your own. Hello everyone. Before I get into the shoutouts, I do want to give you guys a huge, tremendous thank you for, being patient with this video or video series, as it were. In general, with content, just general video making and stuff, I've been in a bit of a rut because my health hasn't been great recently. I have POTS syndrome. It's a neurological heart thing, and sometimes it gets really bad and I just can't do anything, and it kind of sucks. So when that kind of happens, my mental health doesn't get great. I get a lot of anxiety and I just don't feel very great in general. So with all of that said, thank you so much for being patient with me with videos in general. I got quite a few more to come. I've been feeling better gradually, so a lot more stuff is coming, I assure you. So yeah, without further ado, a huge, tremendous thank you to my patrons. That includes Carlos D. Stevens, Riley Cummings, Everlurker 1999, Creepy Leanie, Vector Graphics, Bill Baker, Gina Britton, Luke Brown, Pigpen, Layla Bloom, Hinsvar, Jose Santana, Lizard Queen 27, Newt Newt Fruit Shoot, Henry Costanza, Echo Costa, Questra Ottle, Angry Oyasu, Hexmaniac Hana, Chitoge, Daniel Tellez, Mars, Nova Snow, Jeremiah BLR, Dakota May, Mothic Permanence, Adela Lilith, 322, 32232, Theron Skymere, Chumpkins, Jaded Elf, Armando Duran, Rora Morasso, Ella S, Lena SD 98, Berserker Kong 02, Ellie L, Nikki, Flo Ami, Pada, Ashley Rigby, Meek, Nicholas Babinu, Mercedes Slaughter, Beebles32, Sidnep, Eli Roca, Life on Mars, GreedyGot78, Lilia Grasso, Metal Mario 64, Courtney Von Schriltz, Misao, Dr. Money $69, Nicole Turkowski, Alice Rose, Akali, Anna, Sophia Gillespie, Megan Nicole, Vonnie, Mike Master, Judy 18, Red Hoodie 50, Felix Gonzalez, Alan Achondo, Momo Buns, Mr. Anderson, Michiro Oji, Otonya, Angel Pena, Iggs, Ilio, Brandon Tran, Andrew Valencia, Eels, Do Bro, Jolliser Plays, Beastman Manor, Merotici, Aurora Phoenix, Lauren Marcello, Merlin Caliber, C. Chameleon, Gene 187, Digital Dubs, Omar Ruedas, Coffee Red Fox, Raz Cohen, Shivam Vashi, Daniel Barrientos, Pan Fried Life Jacket Awareness, Nicholas Allen, Stagio VGM, Adam Mitchell, Joka, Enigdra J. Reese, Argua Bill, Leon X8, Teofil Zeta, Christopher Valencia, Hilari, Erica, Justin Fuda, PP Papaskatag, Quetzalcoatl FC, Andrew LaPena, VHS Vitch, Airfire, Grand Tactician, Good with the Stain, Kevin, Jojo, Orlon the Dog, Soko, Jordy Kirk, and Bishonen Knife. Once again, thank you so much, guys. I can't say it enough. You really help me so much, especially in times when I'm really not doing good with my health. I can't really control when I feel really awful and I'm bedridden for weeks, and you guys help me so much in that regard. So thank you for your support, guys, everyone. It really means so much.